Hello folks, Mike here, and thank you very much for joining. We did move the clocks back, so sorry about the confusions. So we are now at 3 o'clock, our usual time, but it'll get a bit darker quicker here. So we're up at Swanston. We're going to do our usual live video and a wee bit of a surprise and a great for us today because Joe is back. Yeah, and I'm just going to swing around. Here's Joe.
Well, good afternoon. It is 3 o'clock and we're here in the glorious village of Swanston. And I'm sorry I couldn't be with you last week, but Joe had a wee bit of an accident a couple of weeks ago. As you can see here, kilt is the most comfortable thing I can wear at the moment, but my leg is in a brace. I managed to take a slip in my own backyard and I ruptured my tendon, connects the quadriceps to the tibia. So I have had my leg horizontal for 2 weeks. It's on repair. I've been on pain management, but I'm going to say a great big thank you to anyone who works in the National Health Service of Great Britain, especially to the workers of the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary. This happened late on a Friday night. Mike and I had a job. We were going to be down to the airport at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I slid on something in my backyard, went down on my knee, and that's when the accident happened. I was straight into accident emergency on the Friday night. I was seen immediately, and I was told that maybe I have to wait a couple of days for the operation. The next day I got a phone call, pack a bag, get in there, and they operated on the Sunday because they say the tissue was actually in really good condition. Because I do a lot of running and I do a lot of gym stuff, and Mike and I do a lot of walking, obviously. And so they got me in and they repaired me. And I want to say a big thank you. So for any nurses or doctors or anywhere, you guys are the best. I've now been able to get out and about. I've got mobility of 30%. This have to wear it when I'm sleeping as well, so it does restrict it. So no more about my leg. It's not about my leg. It's all about here we are in this wonderful village of Swanston, which is in the south of Edinburgh, and it nestles just under the Pentland Hills. And I'm going to have to say the Pentland Hills have been a godsend to the people of Edinburgh during the COVID period. It's been our lifeline. And I have walked up these hills many occasions during the whole of the pandemic. In the hills is our water supplies for Edinburgh. So there's maybe 4 or 5 different reservoirs up here, each of them quite distinct. Some of them are for leisure. You can go in, you can paddleboard, you can swim. Others are for fishing, but it's all fresh water supply. And that connects to one of the stories we're going to tell you, because this little village tells a story in itself. It is picturesque. If Mike can maybe take a wee spin around here, you'll see these old cottages. These are ancient cottages. This little place would be known as a ferm tún. Ferm being Scottish for farm, tún being Scottish for town. So it's a ferm tún. Up north in the Highlands, they would call it a clachan, C-L-A-C-H-A-N. Basically, it's a higgledy-piggledy little hodgepodge of different little cottages where the workers for the farms would live in. Originally, these had been earth floors, so there'd been no floors on them at all. They would have been thatched as well. They'd been small. Some of them they would have kept the animals in, but they're much smaller. Now, of course, they're desirable residences. The roofs are still thatched. The thatch comes from, I think, up in Tayside. I think they get thatched every 8 or 10 years. The cottages have been pushed, so it was 1 into 2 into 3, so that's quite long. And they're quite spacious on the inside. If anybody watches Doctor Who, they'll be familiar with the TARDIS. So some people say they like the TARDIS inside. Very cosy little places. Now, as I say, these would have been built and quite common all over Scotland up until about the 1700s. And as we start walking, we're going to talk about what happened in the late 1700s, leading up to the period of the Enlightenment, that made these things change. So we're going to give you a before and an after kind of shot. So this is the before. You have to take your mind back. These would have been, smoke had been coming out of here. They'd been burning peat or logs from these little cottages here. The conditions would not have been good. So there would be no central heating. As I say, they would keep their animals in there. If you've ever been to Robert Burns' house over in Ayrshire, you would be familiar with the long cottages where they kept the animals on one side and the family lived in the other. It was subsistence living, and the workers here would have worked for the big house, for the farmer. And the big house is still here. We're not going to go that far today for simple reasons that physically I cannot walk that far. So walk with me as we go hobblety-hoy along here. Now, I guess at the moment you'll all be watching your TV. If you're watching your TV, your news at the moment is all going to be about Glasgow. So Scotland's going to be in your news for the next 2 weeks, I believe, because all the world leaders, apart from China and Russia, are in Glasgow at the moment. So thankfully we've come here to the south of the city, because even Edinburgh is quite impossible to get around at the moment. Security is intense, roads get blocked at any time, and I'm so glad that we're not in Glasgow. But Mike and I have been working behind the scenes, and we hope to take you to some of the sites in Glasgow after the COP event. Do you know what COP stands for, Mike?
Yeah, it's a conference of parties.
Yeah, conference of parties.
Yes.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
what it
26. This is the 26th one they've had.
Right, I'll just come in for a minute, Joe, and maybe we'll get you as well. And hey, I'd just like to say the autumn colours just now, that's bringing out the artist in me are just beautiful. For just the backdrop when Joe was talking there with the trees up there behind. And I think the name Swanston, folk might want to know what is the origin of that. Yeah.
Well, my understanding is that goes back to the 12th century, and it was a man called Svein, and Svein had actually owned this land here, so it was known as Swainstown, and so they're going to corrupted through the Scots and through the language development, and so I believe that's the story of it. I think it was Swainstown. Do you know any different from that? Is that?
Yeah. I think something they say about the 13th century.
Yeah.
But also, I think I'll come in again, and folk may be familiar too with the Da Vinci Code, and there's a connection here with the Knights Templars, isn't there? Because they were big landowners in this area, including Swanston. And there's a place called Temple, isn't there? Right. Not very far away. And maybe some of our viewers have maybe gone to Roslin Chapel, which again is a beautiful interior, 15th century. So it's got loads of history and connections with the Templars as well. That's right. Yeah.
And we also have the coves near here. Do you remember the secret coves? Have you been to the coves?
Is that Gilmerton?
Gilmerton Coves, where you go into the house. It's almost like a little cottage. You go in there and you go in. It looks like a regular little shop. When you go into the shop, you go down the stairs, and there are these coves which have been carved out of the sandstone. And some people think it was built for sacrificial purposes. Some people say it was built for when they were hounding the Catholics down. But there is no written history as to why they're there. They don't know why they're there. So this whole area contains so many little secrets. And I'm going to say hello to Fern. Fern sent me an email saying, "Why are you not responding to me?" Well, Fern, the reason I couldn't respond is that I was in one position. It was horizontal. It was very difficult to work your computer when you can't work your leg here. So, Fern, I want to say a big hello to you over in Arizona as well.
Well, we're getting lots of great messages about great to see you back, Joe, and look after yourself, and what a trooper you are,
I'm
and
a
all
trooper,
that
yeah.
stuff.
Hobblety-hoy is the word I'm thinking of here. I hope you had a nice wee view of the cottages down there. Now there is this magazine we have here in Scotland or throughout the UK, and it's called The People's Friend, and I'm sure there's a few of the UK viewers will be familiar with The People's Friend. And every week they have a little painting of quaint little villages, and this is one of the little villages that appears regularly on the front page. It's all water-based. You remember them, Mike? It's all water-based paintings.
That's right, yeah.
And Swanston Village is one of these things. We call it, it's like a chocolate box lid. So you see these things on some, chocolate. When you get a tin of chocolates, they'll have these little country scenes in it. And this is one of the villages that you would see quite often on it. It's a great place to come and visit. And as we start walking down, as I said, we're going to make it a before and after. So you have to take your mind back to the 18th, maybe even 17th century, when this was a working little farm town. Now it's luxury. Don't get me wrong. These are expensive little buildings here. The actual buildings fell into disrepair, and it wasn't until the 1950s where the city council decided to do something about it, and they bought them over and refurbished and repurposed this whole little village because it's such historic significance to Edinburgh. One of the famous people that actually came to stay here was Robert Louis Stevenson. Robert Louis Stevenson, growing up in the city was very, very smoky. Everything was burning down there, burning every apartment, every room in every apartment had its fire. So Edinburgh was well known as Old Reekie for a good reason. Now, Stevenson had weak lungs. He grew up with various lung diseases, and his parents would bring him up here for the summer to the foothills of the Pentlands because the air would be fresher here. And he actually wrote a little part. He actually wrote a little part of it. I think, Mike, you printed something out. Do you want to read that?
Yes, I have. Yeah, Robert Louis Stevenson, he stayed here from about 1867, when he must have been about 17, up until he was about 30, and it was his parents' summer home. And he said, long ago this sheltered field was purchased by the Edinburgh magistrates for the sake of the springs that rise or gather there. After they had built their waterhouse and laid their pipes, it occurred to them that the place was suitable for junketing. An old word of just having a really good time, I think.
Yeah, come to Swanston for a party.
For junketing. And once entertained with jovial magistrates and public funds, the idea led speedily to accomplishment, and Edinburgh could soon boast a municipal pleasure house. The dell was turned into a garden, and on the knoll that shelters it from the rain and the sea winds, they built a cottage looking to the hills, and that's Swanston Cottage.
Swanston Cottage, yep. And plus ça change, eh? Nothing ever changes.
No.
Look at the big junket that's going on in Glasgow right now. I mean, I'd like to take it seriously. I'm sure there's a few decisions are going to come out of Glasgow. And I hope all goes well to our friends in Glasgow. Now, as I said, Mike and I have been working behind the scenes. We have been speaking to people in Glasgow, and we're hoping to take you inside Kelvin Grove, because it's interesting that COP26, and they're talking about carbon release and restructuring our whole industry, because it was in Glasgow where James Watt invented the combustion engine, or developed the combustion engine. So this is where it all started, back in Glasgow. So we are the root of all evil, Mike. Do you know that?
Yes.
The Scots are the root of all evil. And it's interesting that they're having it back there. I wonder if they'll take them, or I wonder if they'll bring the combustion engine up to their exhibition area in the blue zone, or wherever it is that they're in, or the green zone, wherever all the high hegians are from all around the world. But we talk about, taking a bit further back, we talk about industrialisation. After the Battle of Culloden, which was in 1746, Scotland went through a massive change in its whole outlook. It was the first time for almost 100 years that Scotland could actually look outside itself and not be at war. The war had come to an end. Britain could look outside itself, so Britain basically went on this great land grab. So the land grab started. The empire was building. Britain was becoming a powerhouse, but it was seen more so in Scotland. We had this massive transfer of people moving out of the country into the cities. The cities were developing at a huge rate, and a lot of these little farms were falling into disrepair because some of the people were forced out of their land, and we'll talk later on about the clearances, but not talk about them now. So some people were forced out, but some people volunteered because they saw that life in the city seemed much better, there's better opportunities. But that caused problems for the agriculture. However, the agricultural owners of the land saw how they could develop the land. So Scotland itself went through this massive agricultural revolution. And it's where people saw that they could actually use and develop the land. But that caused, again, problems because maybe there wasn't enough people to work the land, so they had to attract people back from the cities or to retain people in the country. And so various policies were developed. We had this almost situation where people were being forced out of some of the lands up in the Highlands. People were being forced out of the lands here down in the south. People were then emigrating. Some were being forced to emigrate. So Canada was opened up, the Carolinas were opened up. The Scots were moving from here all over. So it was just the whole country seemed to be on the move at the same time. And there weren't enough people to work the land. And so these little farm tunes were falling into disrepair, people had to think about different things. How are they going to change? How are they going to attract people in, keep the artisans on the land? So the landowners came up with this idea of planning new villages, planning new accommodation. And this happened here in Swanston itself, where they got the farmer who wanted to attract people, to retain people, thought we're going to have to give better conditions for these people to live in. And so we're going to walk around the corner here and we're going to show you the new village that was planned and developed as well. But some of you would have been aware that yesterday was Halloween. And Mike, did you have lots of geysers coming around your house?
Yes, I did. We had a turnip lantern as well, as opposed to a pumpkin, because that is traditionally Scottish. And we had what was called geysers, which was young folk, children, mainly coming around dressed up. Now, it wasn't bought outfits, it wasn't bought costumes, it was actually mainly homemade. So, and they would tell a joke. There was no trick or treating. They didn't say trick or treat. They came to the door and I said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to do a dance? Are you going to sing a song? Are you going to tell a joke? And mainly it was tell a joke. And they tell a good joke, get me laughing, then they get a sweetie. So that's a Scots tradition.
That's a tradition. And I know a lot of people think that the tradition came from the United States and it came back here. But actually the Scots were celebrating Samhain, or Halloween, as a pagan festival long before Christianity. And so it actually came from here and Ireland, went over to the States, and then it developed into what they call trick-or-treat. Now here we never call them trick-or-treaters, as you say, we call them geysers. G-U-I-Z-E-R? Because they're in disguise, I guess. Or is it from the old Norse? Is it S?
I think it's S.
G-U-Y-S-E-R? So does it come from the Nordic geyser, or? But it goes back to Celtic tradition. And as you say, you'd have these traditions where they'd come around and the kids would come out and you would go from door to door, like the trick-or-treaters. But there was other traditions that we used to do, and as you mentioned, our lanterns were made out of turnips because pumpkins were a new development for us back here. So pumpkins didn't really become popular until maybe the 70s or the 80s.
Yeah, it was around then.
So traditionally you would actually go and steal a turnip from the farmer's field and carve it out and make your little jack-o'-lantern. But you'd also have these other little things that you do. I don't know if you did bobbing for apples?
Yes, or dukin.
Dukin, yeah, bobbing in English and dukin. So you would have a basin full of apples, and then we used to do the fork. You'd put the fork in your mouth, and you would stand up or sit in a chair, and you have to fork the apple, and then you would put that in your bag. And also you would duke for nuts. You would have peanuts in a basin, and you'd put your face in. And of course you're getting filthy, because your makeup or your suit you would have in your face, you're getting filthy. And then you would hang treacle scones from a pulley, and you weren't allowed to eat. Your hands were behind your back, and you had to eat these treacle scones. So the kids getting messier and messier as they went on. And then they would have to do a little turn, a little song and a dance. But we got money. We didn't get sweets. We got money. And that money was the money you used to buy your fireworks on bonfire night. That's how we used to earn our money.
You're right, Joe. It wasn't sweets, because I remember geysing as well, and it was money. And also, you okay?
I just stood in a rock there.
I've got a joke.
Right, go tell you a joke.
Here's the joke. What did one ghost say to the other ghost?
I don't know. What did one ghost say to the other ghost?
Do you believe in humans?
These are the things you get when the kids come round. So it was good last night. I mean, I live in a little community with a cul-de-sac, and all the neighbourhood kids come round, and now it's all sweeties. And of course, we always used to get fruit. We were given fruit as well. And of course, I had the sweeties on the bowl of sweeties and the bowl of fruit. That bowl of fruit was untouched. Those kids were not interested in tangerines or apples. They wanted candies and sweeties. So they were all fairly happy. So that's good. So we talked about the before and the after. So we talked about the agricultural revolution, planned villages. We saw the thatched villages up here. And now we're looking at the planned villages, so the modern villages. And I think these ones go back to the early 1800s. So this is what you call a little planned village. So the Ferntune, or up north the Clachan, would just like to be a higgledy-piggledy mix of dwellings.
Yeah. So you've got, Joe, you've got the old thatched cottages, which originally didn't have proper floors.
Yeah.
I believe they
They
had
were
earth
earthen floors,
earth
yeah.
floors, and they had no electricity and
There had no running water.
no running water until the 1930s. And they were there, is that right? They were there for the springs. All was to do with the business of getting water to Edinburgh, and a community built up, and you would have your water engineer
Yeah.
who would have the best cottage.
Yeah.
And that was the house where Robert Louis Stevenson.
That's further down. These these cottages you see here
Yeah.
predate. These are part of the old Fern Tune.
Yeah.
The new part of the village which is still it's too far to go at the moment, is actually further down where Robert Louis Stevenson stayed.
Yeah.
Where there was a new in the 1800s. So there was new developments down there for the water springs, because some of our viewers will remember when we were walking through the old town of Edinburgh, we stopped at some of the wells. Remember we talked about caddies and the water caddies where they would get all the fresh water. Well, this is where the fresh water for Edinburgh was piped in for. So there are natural water springs all over here. And this is Comston Springs. And so the springs were piped in. And going back to the 1600s now, the water was piped in from here into Edinburgh by gravity, but no pumps, purely by gravity. So it was again, how mathematically they planned these things to get the water piped right from here into Edinburgh city centre up to the castle area, because right outside the castle is now a shop, was the actual reservoir for the city, but the water was piped in fresh from here. And so this is again has got historic connections with the city of Edinburgh. Although it's right on the edge of the city now, Edinburgh would have been a few miles from here. Edinburgh's encroached further as it's grown to the south here as well. Yeah. But this is a before and the after. This is the after for the farm. So this is the new planned villages for the farm tunes, and you'll see these villages like this all over Scotland, where they had to attract the workers to come back to the land, to work the land, to prevent them from going into the factories or compete with those who were going into the factories. And the cities were very attractive. There was money to be made in the cities, although conditions in the cities were appalling as well. And also there was the mass emigration taking place that started in the late 1700s through to the 1800s.
And we're only about 5 miles out of the middle of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
So we're not far away.
Not far away at all.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd just give you a little autumnal view here. We're right under the Pentland Hills. I mean, don't even know, even behind these houses here, you might see the hills grow up here. And this is the Pentland Hills are a regional park, so they belong to the people. And I was speaking to one of the locals here just before we arrived, and we got chatting, and he was saying that the farmer here is trying to put in plans to put in things like zip wires and things like this to develop. I mean, because we're very, very close to the artificial ski slope here, but they're looking to develop it, and I think it'd be a real shame, because this is a real picturesque little place. It's a breath of fresh air here in Edinburgh, and a great place to come and walk, and it's a place where tourists would never come to. You can't get coaches here, you can't get buses here. You really need to have someone like a blue badge guide. If you want to go off the beaten track, you've got to have someone like a blue badge guide who can bring you here and walk you around. And if you want to go for a nice trail while you're in Edinburgh, this is a great place to come and visit. Connections with Stevenson, connection with the water supplies, significant in terms of the agricultural revolution that Scotland went through. So it's got a real stamp of history, and it's a beautiful little place here.
I think there's a connection too with Edwin Muir, the poet, because I noticed there was a wee seat further up as well. So it was a place beloved by literary people and artists as well, of course. I've been up at our Muir Hill doing a commission a few years ago for very keen hill walkers. This couple, it was a favourite spot, and they said, Mike, can you do us a painting? So I went up there and did a picture, because it's amazingly beautiful. It's just wonderful, and you get wonderful views over the Edinburgh skyline as well. Is that Blackford Hill there?
You can see Arthur Seat way in the distance.
Oh yeah, you can see the bump of it just over there.
Way in the distance. So you're just in the southern suburbs of...
there we go, just down there.
Very good. We've got ourselves our free-range hens here.
And look at the light. It's a wonderful light because,
Yeah.
I mean, it's November and it's just that golden light. And
Come
we've
and
got
take a
the
look
hens.
at look at the hens. They think it's feeding time. So as I mentioned, Mike and I have been working behind the scenes. We're hoping to get some stuff indoors. We have been speaking to people in Glasgow, so we're hoping to get indoors at Kelvin Grove, and we might be able to show you the original James Watt contraption. But we're also looking at going up to Dunblane. We'll be speaking to people who run the Bishop Leighton's library there, and they're very keen for us to come up and do a stint up there. So I'm going to say, with me and the girls,
Yes.
come the ladies, come my little free-range hens here. Hey girls, look at them all here, they're quite cute as the buttons. Hey ladies. It's live, we get to you never know what's going to turn up in our podcast, Mike.
So hopefully you can see both of us. And I just want to say a great thank you to Joe here. I mean, what a trooper. I mean, his leg and coming up and doing this tour. I've enjoyed it so much to get back with you and do a physical tour.
Yeah,
it's
great
just wonderful.
To get out and about, you know.
It's
And
great
also,
fun,
I tell
yeah.
you what, the kilt is the most comfortable thing that I own at the moment because
Easy to put on.
easy to put on, and you know, it fits with the brace very well. So yeah, everything's hunky dory. So you'll be able to watch the progress of my leg as we go on, stage by stage. But I'm glad to say the pain has dissipated an awful lot. I will say that when I was in hospital, I did have some morphine, and it was like being on a magic carpet. So I am not advocating people take drugs, but I was somewhere else when I was in hospital there. Accidents happen. You just got to be careful, and I will be looking after myself. And hopefully, in about 6 or 7 weeks, I'll be back. I said I don't know if I'll be back doing 6 kilometres a day, but I'll certainly be back at fitness. And swimming will start up quite soon, and I've got to keep this brace on for 4 weeks after. So I want to say a big thank you anyway. So it's nice to be back. We love doing what we do. Hope you enjoy what we are doing as well.